welcome to the Room of Requirement. This is part 2 of a 6-part series that I am doing on the history of magic and esotericism. And this one is going to be covering Greece, Alexandria, and Hermeticism. So let's go ahead and dive in. The philosophers, mysteries, and sacred cosmos. Greece, Alexandria, Hermeticism, and the birth of Western esotericism. As the ancient temple civilizations of Egypt and Mesopotamia established the foundations of ritual, celestial observation, and sacred order, their knowledge did not vanish, it traveled. Through conquest, trade, migration, and cultural exchange, these currents flowed into the Mediterranean world. By the time we reach circa 800 to 300 BCE in ancient Greece, a transformation begins. What once held primarily in temple systems now begins to merge with philosophy, inquiry, and individual contemplation. Magic does not disappear, it evolves, becoming more interior, more symbolic, and increasingly tied to the structure of consciousness itself. Greek culture emerged during the time of expanding trade networks, political experimentation, and intellectual curiosity. Unlike the temple-centered civilizations before it, Greece fostered a culture of questioning, seeking to understand not only what the cosmos is, but why it operates as it does. Yet beneath the philosophical surface, the older currents remain intact. The Greeks inherited and absorbed Egyptian, Babylonian, and Near Eastern knowledge, reinterpreting it through their own language and systems of thought. By circa 600 to 400 BCE, early philosophers such as Pythagoras began articulating a vision of reality that was deeply esoteric in nature. Pythagoras is often remembered for mathematics, but within esoteric tradition, he represents something far more profound, the understanding that number is the structure of reality. To the Pythagoreans, numbers were not merely quantities, they were living principles, harmonies that governed both the cosmos and the soul. This marks a shift in magic from purely ritual action to cosmic understanding, the idea that the universe operates through hidden patterns that can be studied, aligned with, and embodied, become central. The types of magic practiced in this Greek period begin to diversify. Alongside inherited forms of divination and ritual practice, we see the rise of philosophical magic, numerical mysticism, and initiatory discipline. Pythagorean communities themselves functioned as initiatory orders, where students underwent purification, silence, ethical training, and the study of harmonic law. This is one of the earliest examples of what would later become structured esoteric schools, where transformation occurs not only through ritual, but through disciplined living and inner refinement. At the same time, oracular traditions remain deeply embedded in everyday life. The Oracle of Delphi, active from around circa 800 BCE onward, served as a central point of divination for individuals and city-states alike. Kings, generals, and citizens would consult the oracle before major decisions. This shows that even as philosophy advanced, divinatory magic remained a living practical force, guiding action, shaping events, and mediating between human uncertainty and divine insight. As Greek thought matured, it gave rise to figures such as Plato, circa 428 to 348 BCE, whose influence on esotericism cannot be overstated. Plato introduced the idea that the physical world is not the ultimate reality, but a reflection of a higher, more perfect form. This concept, the distinction between the visible and invisible worlds, becomes one of the central pillars of esoteric philosophy. In this framework, magic is no longer only about influencing external events, but about ascending the soul toward higher truth. Knowledge itself becomes initiatory. Plato's work laid the groundwork for later systems that view reality as layered, physical, intellectual, and divine. This layering directly informed later Hermeticism, Neoplatonism, Kabbalah, and ceremonial magic. The idea that the practitioner must refine perception to access higher levels of reality is still foundational in modern esoteric training. Following Plato, the Hellenistic world, particularly after the conquest of Alexander the Great around 330 BCE, became a melting pot of cultures. Greek, Egyptian, Persian, and Mesopotamian knowledge converged, especially in the city of Alexandria. This convergence marks one of the most important turning points in esoteric history. Here, the ancient temple knowledge of Egypt meets Greek philosophy and Babylonian astrology, giving rise to entirely new systems. It is within this environment, between roughly circa 200 BCE and 300 CE, that Hermeticism emerges. Attributed to Hermes Trismegistus, a syncretic figure combining the Egyptian Thoth and the Greek Hermes, Hermetic texts articulate a profound vision of reality, that the universe is mental, symbolic, and interconnected. The famous principle, as above, so below, reflects a direct continuation of earlier correspondence systems, but now expressed philosophically and spiritually rather than purely ritually. Hermetic magic is not merely about performing rites. It is about understanding the structure of reality and aligning the self with it. The types of magic practiced in this period included astral magic, talismanic magic, theurgy, which is divine union, and intellectual contemplation as a form of transformation. Practitioners worked with planetary forces, created charged objects, studied correspondences, and sought direct knowledge of the divine through inner awakening. At the same time, astrology, inherited from the Babylonian systems, became more formalized and individualized. No longer used only for kings and empires, it began to be applied to personal fate, character, and destiny. This marks a major shift. Magic and celestial knowledge are becoming personalized, not just collective. The individual's birth chart becomes a map of cosmic influence, a concept still central in modern astrology today. Parallel to Hermeticism, Gnosticism, circa 100 to 300 CE, emerged as another esoteric current. Gnostic traditions taught that the material world is a kind of veil or illusion, and that divine knowledge, or gnosis, is required to awaken from it. This introduces a more radical interiorization of magic. The focus is no longer only on aligning with cosmic order, but on awakening from the limitations of the material plane altogether. Gnostic practices included meditation, symbolic interpretation, and initiatory teachings aimed at liberation through knowledge. Later, Neoplatonism, circa 200 to 500 CE, particularly through figures like Plotinus and Iamblichus, further refined these ideas. Plotinus emphasized the ascent of the soul through contemplation, while Iamblichus reintroduced the importance of ritual through theurgy, the practice of invoking divine presence to elevate the soul. This balance between inner realization and external ritual became a defining feature of later ceremonial magic traditions. Culturally, this period was one of transition and complexity. The Hellenistic world was marked by empire, cultural blending, philosophical schools, and increasing exposure to diverse spiritual systems. As traditional civic religion began to shift, individuals sought more personal and transformational paths. Mystery schools, such as the Eleusinian Mysteries, offered initiatory experiences centered around death, rebirth, and divine revelation. These were not symbolic performances. They were lived experiences intended to transform the participants' understanding of life and death. The types of magic practiced within these mystery traditions included initiation rites, symbolic death and rebirth experiences, sacred drama, and direct experiential encounters with the divine. These practices still echo today in initiatory orders, ceremonial rites, and even psychological models of transformation. The structure of initiation, preparation, descent, revelation, return remains one of the most enduring frameworks in esoteric work. What makes this era so critical is that it bridges the ancient and the modern. The ritual precision of Egypt, the celestial science of Mesopotamia, and the philosophical depth of Greece converge into systems that are recognizable today. Hermeticism, astrology, theurgy, and initiatory traditions all emerge here in forms that will directly influence Renaissance magic, the grimoires, the Golden Dawn, and modern occult systems. Without this period, there would be no coherent framework connecting ancient ritual to modern esoteric practice. The idea of correspondences, the layered cosmos, planetary influence, initiation, and inner transformation, all of these are refined and transmitted through this era. Thus, magic evolves from temple-based cosmic maintenance into something more expansive, a path of knowledge, transformation, and alignment with universal law. It becomes both external and internal, both ritual and realization. As the classical world begins to shift and empires rise and fall, this body of knowledge does not disappear. It becomes hidden, translated, and preserved across cultures. In the medieval period, Jewish mystics, Islamic scholars, and Christian thinkers will safeguard, reinterpret, and expand these teachings. What was once openly practiced in temples and mystery schools will move into manuscripts, coded texts, angelic systems, and early grimoires, laying the groundwork for the next phase of esoteric development. Okay, you guys, I hope you enjoyed this one. Next, I will be doing the medieval period, and I look forward to seeing you guys then. All right, bye.